Thank you, Jim. I am very excited about this panel. Before I go ahead and introduce the panelists, just some scene setting here. I mean, obviously, street homelessness is one of the biggest challenges that our region faces. And something that I'm really excited about this year is we're going to be having solution-focused discussions. And so it's going to be a little different than in past years. Each of the panelists here are going to present their solution, then they're going to hash it out a little bit together, and then we'll go to questions. And so it should be a pretty interesting discussion. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce the panelists. First off, we have Dr. Margot Kushel, a professor of medicine at UC San Francisco, who is also director of the Benioff Homelessness and Housing Initiative. We have retired Marine Colonel Paddy Gough, who is involved with Sunbreak Ranch, and Iain De Jong, president and CEO of Code Consulting, who's made many a trip to San Diego over the years for the Regional Task Force on Homelessness and other projects. So I am going to pass this over to Margot to present her solution, and we'll take it from there. And I should add, I'm about to turn the timer on. Each of our panelists gets 10 minutes to present their solution. So I am turning on my timer.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lisa. Margot Kushel from UC San Francisco. And I want to be clear, this is not the solution to unsheltered homelessness. This is a solution to a particular type. Just to level set, when we conducted the California statewide survey of people experiencing homelessness, looking at adults in California, 78% had spent the majority of their nights in the previous 6 months unsheltered, 21% the majority of their nights in a vehicle. Many more than that had been in a vehicle for part of the time, but many had lost their vehicle. I'm going to tell a story of a particularly troublesome encampment in Berkeley, California, and how the city responded. This was an encampment that looked like this, occupied by 36 known residents, many of whom lived in oversized vehicles, of which there were 19. The residents were noted to be older, many struggling with both physical health, substance use, and mental health problems, sort of the trifecta. And over the course of the year, the encampment residents either called or had their encampment called emergency services a lot. To give you a sense of it, there was one police call for every 1.5 days on average, and a fire service call every 4.5 days. This led to 252 police calls, 45%, which were noted to be high priority. So lots of sort of chaos going on. Over about a 2-year period, in an effort to preserve public health, the city conducted 6 deep cleaning efforts, removing large accumulations of debris and trash and human waste and rats and other things. The neighbors were pretty incensed and wrote to their supervisor with lots of problems. Barely clothed women, clearly impaired by drugs, exiting an RV, needles on the sidewalk, trespassing, a stabbing. This was a difficult encampment. And there was no question that people living in the encampment were suffering terribly. The conditions they were living in was both dangerous and unsanitary. They were aging and had many mental health and substance use problems. And while they lived in an industrial area, the sanitation problems, fire, and general public disorder were highly disturbing to people living and working nearby. So what did the city do? The first thing they do is they followed best practices of choosing which encampments to focus on. In our small city of Berkeley, this was not the only encampment, but they knew they didn't have resources for them all. So they followed best practices, which we've outlined on our website at the BHI. They're publicly available, to prioritize which ones. Basically using a combination of the vulnerability of the residents and the problems of the encampment. So they didn't go for sort of the easiest one. They looked for the residents who were most personally at risk, but also the encampment that was causing them most public disorder. They went slowly. They didn't walk in one day and say, we're out. They sent city staff in over the course of months who built trust, got to know residents, and developed a by name list. They tried as hard as they could to develop trust with them. Now, for privacy reasons, I'm not presenting photos of the encampment residents, but these are photos that we took on our study of California. So these are real photos of people experiencing homelessness. So they created a list of those in the encampment. They held multiple meetings to explain their offer. And what did they offer? Non-congregate shelter. This is extremely important. People were offered the chance to have a room with their own bathroom that did not require sobriety. People were invited to come as they were. They offered to buy back people's vehicle. They knew that people's vehicle was the most precious possession they had, and they were unlikely to give up that vehicle, their most precious possession, just to turn it away. So they came up with a strategy to offer people $175 per linear foot of the vehicle that was offered in 2 installments. First, when you left the encampment and moved into the shelter, you got about 15%. You could keep that even if you went back to your vehicle. The rest of the money was given to them. Thank you. The rest of the money was given to them after the vehicle was towed. So basically, by the time the city got rid of the vehicle, then you got the rest of it. So what happened? Basically, of the 36 people in the encampment, and remember, these were the most sort of complicated, problematic people. They had been homeless a long time, lots of substance use, lots of mental health problems. 29 of the 36 people, in fact, moved indoors. 27 to one of the 2 hotels that they were offering this. 2 moved to others, and 7 declined the offer, of whom 3 were part of one family, where 2 of the 3 wanted to, and 1 of the 3 did not. Okay.
Just a moment.
I'm going to be like the congressperson and say, I want my time back.
Most infrastructure recognizing that.
Now we're in chaos. What shall I do, Lisa? I'm going to stop my clock.
Yes, I am going to stop the clock for a moment here too.
Sorry, guys. It's like right in I'm like right in the middle of the really good part.
Yeah, and we're so sorry. We're aware of the sound issue and are trying to work on it. So I may give Margot a couple extra minutes. I think she's earned it.
Hold your attention when there's competing noise. All right.
The cities in the United States. You see the stats on the page.
Oh, now see the mayor. If you were wondering which time to go to, now you can go to both. Listen to both at once. No, we can still hear them.
Yes.
Yeah. No. Any luck, Julianne?
Yeah, I mean, we have your slides, but do you want to do you need to get them again?
Maybe they need to turn on. Okay. Do you want me to go on? Can people hear me with the noise?
Really loudly. We don't know why it's happening.
All right.
So sorry, Margot.
It's all good. No, it's all good.
But I'm going to give Margot a few extra minutes.
All right. So basically over 80% took the offer. And again, of those who didn't, it was mostly one family where most of the family wanted to, but one had hesitation. So many people took the offer that they didn't have enough room for them. They didn't plan for it. So multiple encampment residents were like, I don't really know that guy. They're not my partner, but I'll share a hotel room with them because I want to come indoors. So all this thought that people don't want to come indoors, not actually true. Of the 19 vehicles offered, 16 accepted the offer. At least one of the 3 that didn't actually moved into the hotel and gave their working vehicle back to their sister who had been loaning them. So most of the vehicles disappeared from city streets. People moved in last January to March. So far, 7 have moved on to permanent housing. Several are preparing to re-enter the workforce. Nearly everyone has engaged in healthcare, mental health care, things like buprenorphine and other evidence-based treatment for substance use. In one particularly moving issue, a woman who had a life-threatening condition for which she had not been able to get medical care for, once she moved indoors, got the surgery that is curative that she otherwise was unable to get. And this is what the encampment looks like more.
Wow.
How about the neighbors of the hotel? I can tell you they're thrilled. And how do I know it? Because the hotel is a block and a half from my house. Now, I'm a physician. My husband's an attorney. We are very blessed to own a very nice house, and we live in a very nice neighborhood. I monitor my neighborhood's listservs where people complain about everything. And there has been zero complaints about our neighbors who live in the hotel. And I will tell you that the encampment wasn't in my neighborhood. So folks moved from a different neighborhood to mine and no one minds. And I just want to reorient us to the people. This is what one of the residents said. At first, just hearing about the buyback program was like offering to buy my vehicle to get me off the street is a fantastic idea, because that's actually their vehicle, what was holding me to the street at that point. I mean, it was my shelter. It was my house, basically. So to leave that, I'm worried. And then to have to sell it or have someone buy it at the same time, it was like two birds with one stone. And it made everything sort of believable that I could actually do it. Because I could see where people would try to come off the street or whatever, but in order to do that, they would have to leave everything that they had there. And that's basically your house. If I didn't have something to push forward, I don't know I would have been able to do it. And I'd probably end up losing the vehicles and get towed away. And that would be just another heartbreak that would have spun me backwards. So just a reminder that the solution to homelessness is housing, period, and full stop. The problem that we have solving homelessness is not that we don't know what to do. We know what to do. It's simply that we haven't brought real solutions to scale. We won't end homelessness until we address the underlying issues. But we know what to do. And now we just need the political will to do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Margot. And I'm going to put on a 10-minute timer if you'd like to hand it off to Patty. Got a pause on that one. I've got to create a new one because I had to stop it so that we could give Margot the time that she definitely earned when we were having sound issues. And my apologies for that. We seem to have fixed it. And now we are handing off to Patty. Timer is on.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm going to use up a couple seconds of my time to request that the audience applaud Margot for her resilience. That was the gutsiest move I've ever seen. Thank you all. Thank you for allowing me to have this opportunity. I'm honored to have this opportunity to come and talk to you today about a solution, not the solution, to street homelessness, specifically in San Diego. Why me? I'm not a clinician. You see up there, I'm a retired Marine colonel, 30 years in the Marine Corps, a Cobra pilot, and 8 deployments, 4 combat deployments. You know, what in God's name am I doing messing around with homelessness? Well, as Margot and I talked a little bit earlier, my life has been given to serving our nation. And I had a void when I retired from the Marine Corps and went on to become CEO of several different companies and organizations. But I just didn't have that sense of giving back. And now, since I've become affiliated with Sunbreak Ranch, I have the opportunity, along with a lot of other people, that want to solve an absolute crisis within our city of San Diego, the county of San Diego, the state of California, and the nation. So it's an opportunity for me and the rest of my team to give back. As of I started out just trying to help where I could as an advocate, attending meetings, trying to talk to really smart people and learn a lot from a lot of people. And then about 2 months ago, they asked me if I would go ahead and become the CEO. And the only reason, again, I'm not a clinician, I'm not an expert on homelessness, but I get things done. And that's what we need right now. We need to focus on less talk and more action. And that's our strategy. Our long-term strategy at Sunbreak Ranch is to put ourselves out of business. We would hope that in conjunction with everybody else that is attacking this problem in a multifaceted, cooperative, and collegial way, that we can end street homelessness and go out of business. And that's probably a bad business model if you're in a for-profit organization, but that's the model that we aspire to attain. The quickest way to describe Sunbreak Ranch is that we're attacking the problem of street homelessness as a continuum of care. And one of the things that we have seen is that initiatives that put a premium on moving people directly from the street environment into housing probably have less of a chance of success, our opinion, than moving people off the streets into a facility where they can be treated with dignity and respect, placed into a safe environment where they're off the streets, away from the predators that prey on them, get them the medical treatment, get them the psychological treatment, diagnose their conditions, and then facilitate them taking advantage of access to all the different services that are provided in the government side of things and then the nonprofit side of things. As a Marine, we always have to have a place to start planning. And I'll put this up there, and please don't misunderstand me. I'm not pointing fingers. Everybody that has tried to tackle homelessness in the past and are still trying to tackle homelessness believe that their plan, their solution is the best one. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it. I assume. I'm hoping that we're talking about the goodness in everybody's hearts. But we really had to figure out what it is that was wrong. Why are we failing in our attack on the problem with homelessness? We're spending billions with a B of dollars, both in the state and local areas here. And the problem is just getting progressively worse. Einstein's theory there of wondering how we're going to change things if we're constantly doing the same thing, or constantly doing the same thing and expecting something different as an outcome. That's Einstein's theory of insanity, or definition of insanity. Well, I think, and I've ventured to guess that most people would think that if we're doing stuff, spending money, and the problem's getting worse, maybe from a policy perspective, we ought to rethink the policies. And we're apolitical at Sunbreak Ranch. We don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, independent, libertarian, because the people on the streets, they don't aspire to, or they don't affiliate with any political party, so we shouldn't either. The policy failures that we see at Sunbreak Ranch and in the research that we've done thus far, I hate to be morbid, but they're resulting in real people dying on the street daily. And if we're going to sit back, this is me speaking about why I got involved. If Paddy's going to sit back and admire the problem and not get off the bench and into the game to do something about it, well, then shame on me.
Paddy, you have about 4 minutes, so I want to make sure you get to your solution.
Yeah, there's big words on the other slides here. Okay, so there's Sunbreak Ranch, the mission statement. again, it's a triage facility, much like we did in combat. We don't take people that are wounded and take them right straight to Walter Reed or Balboa. We take them to a triage center, as your friend would attest, take them to a triage center where they're diagnosed and then directed to the proper areas to get the treatment that they need. We need to break the cycle of now taking people off the street to jail, back onto the street, back to jail, back onto the street, into homes, back onto the street. We need to break that cycle. And we need to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollars. How is Sunbreak Ranch different? Triage first. Establish the continuum of care. Next thing we need to do is protect. The homeless need a safe, secure environment protected from those external threats that I talked about. We need to prepare individuals, so equip them with the skills, the tools, and the resources so that they can establish a foundation from which they can leave Sunbreak Ranch. Again, Sunbreak Ranch is a very temporary facility. Eventually, we'll get them into places. The Alpha Project, which just came on board with us, East County Transitional Living Center, those types of places, and then propel. We need to empower the people to get back to becoming constructive members of society and give back to their communities. So the things that we need to have happen, and this can't happen with just Sunbreak Ranch. We need to return to the rule of law. And I can talk about that a little bit more later. We need the federal government to declare a state of homeless state of emergency. And that way we can get the funding that we need to facilitate everybody that's trying to help this situation. And Sunbreak Ranch, we want to make sure that we're doing things in an incremental manner. So we're going to start with veterans first, get them off the streets, mostly because those individuals have served unselfishly before. They've hit on hard times. They've gotten involved with drugs and alcohol or whatever the case, whatever ended up causing them to get on the streets, we want to fix and then rework them back into our system. And finally, a safe, secure location, and we can talk a little bit more about that offline. Finally, the key thing here is it's voluntary. Nobody's going to pick people up off the streets, arrest them, take them here, and have them sit in a concentration camp. We want to treat clients with the dignity and respect that they deserve. The need is immediate. Every minute that we sit around and talk and admire the problem, real people are dying on the streets. We need to take care of our brothers and sisters, regardless of race, religion, sexual orientation. It doesn't matter whether they have dogs, cats, children, it doesn't matter. We talked about non-political. And then ultimately, once we validate the model here in San Diego, and we will validate the model here in San Diego, we want to export it to elsewhere in the state and elsewhere across the nation. And then finally, we're looking at ourselves, we call it the FedEx model, as a hub. Come to Sunbreak Ranch, that's the hub. And then we'll use spokes to get the individuals directed to those people, places, and things, those organizations that can help them the most. And when they're ready to move on, when they're ready to graduate from Sunbreak Ranch, then we'll get them to the next step in their continuum of care. That's all I've got. How'd I do on time, Coach?
Good. You got 12 seconds left. So. Okay. Now passing the mic and the clicker over to Iain. 10 minutes start.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here. Real pleasure. Really want to say thank you, Margot, for setting the stage of responding to unsheltered homelessness to a humane response. And thank you to Paddy for your commitment to wanting to do better by people who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness. I've been at this work now for more than 30 years, and I reject the premise that we are the problem. Because those of us who do the work on the front lines know the issue is we're not bringing solutions to scale, not that we don't know solutions. We absolutely know how to end homelessness. Everybody we work with needs somewhere to live, something to do, and someone to love. You get that right, and everything falls into sequence thereafter. So you need to focus on what actually solves homelessness, not what treats the Band-Aids. If you had an issue with not enough classrooms for students, you wouldn't blame the kids. If you didn't have enough doctors in the hospital, you wouldn't blame the patient. If you don't have enough permanent housing options with supports, don't blame people who are homeless. So I'm going to come at this from the flamethrower perspective. Do you want to actually end homelessness through a proven, cost-effective, evidence-based model of housing and support brought to scale, or perpetuate unsheltered homelessness through an unproven model that has hefty logistic challenges and flies in the face of evidence as proposed? So here's the pitch. If you want to move the needle on unsheltered homelessness, you need to give people permanent places to go. And the way in which we do this to work through a rapid implementation is to start from the premise that if every council district has schools and if every council district has parks, start looking at housing as public infrastructure and less as a gift that's given to people who are poor. So permanent supportive housing in every council district, integrated into the community. Stop looking at this as, oh, this eyesore that's going to be put up. But actually look at what are the ways that we can have meaningful social occupation and engagement and give people opportunities to do the things that they want to do, not what they're socially conditioned to do. We want to use acquisition, rehabilitation, and/or modular construction to turbocharge speed of development. This is not a new concept. It has been proven in countries throughout the world. And for those of you who don't know, I spend over 300 days a year working on homelessness throughout the world. I don't live in San Diego. I just get to come and visit and help a lot. And what I know for sure is that if you look in countries that have seen great reductions in homelessness, they put the emphasis on development. They put emphasis on the solution. And for those of you who say, but the costs are going to be so high, let's use social impact funds to help fund operations and services. If we can actually prove that we will get a better return on investment for the taxpayer, why not let people invest in bonds to actually get the resources to bring it to scale faster? I want community liaison committees in every single council district to deal with community and neighborhood potential opposition right from the very beginning. It is good that community liaison committees understand what happens inside the building, but it's also good for staff who work inside the building to know what's going on inside the neighborhood. Right. And so establishing forms of communication from the very beginning, 2,500 units of PSH built over 5 years. And you might say that's impossible. Look at countries that have seen reductions. It is absolutely possible. What's matter is the capital and the political will, not the technology. Intensive training for all staff to practice the model with fidelity. If you call something permanent supportive housing, but you don't actually practice it as permanent supportive housing, it's not permanent supportive housing. That's like me saying I'm a supermodel. Now, some of you didn't find that funny because you're like, he's not. But I don't be confused by this sample of awesomeness. I'm not a supermodel. But also in my travels, lots of people call what they do PSH and it isn't PSH. We actually need to give people the tools and the funding to do it. We have to stop asking paramedics to act like they're surgeons, which is essentially what's happening in the front lines of the homeless service response. And we want to have comprehensive monitoring and continuous quality improvement that publicly reports things on dashboards. So complete transparency. Who are we talking about? Well, many years ago, Malcolm Gladwell, someone you might have heard of, wrote in the New Yorker, a publication you may have heard of, the story of $1 Million Murray. Now, this is going way back. But if we assume that some people experiencing chronic homelessness in this community are consuming more than $1 million in resources without their homelessness solved, I will absolutely agree that that is a waste of money because we can provide lots of Band-Aids or we can provide a solution. I want to focus on highest service utilizers. Those are actually having the most intersection with other systems of care. I want those to have that have significant challenges and barriers to be the ones that are shepherded through the process the most. In other words, you get it if you need it, not if you want it. I want to be in a position where those who may not use or cannot use existing services meet daily needs or having their basic daily needs met, but are not moving beyond it. I want to focus on that population because if you don't focus on this group, you don't bend the curve on reducing homelessness. The effectiveness of it. When funded, staffed, and trained adequately, PSH is the most effective intervention at providing what? A permanent home. You wanted a solution to unsheltered homelessness? It's called housing. On-site and mobile services. So all those great resources that Paddy was talking about, I don't need to be socially conditioned to rehabilitate into society. I need a permanent place to live where you're giving the supports you need. Much like if you had an issue in your house and we don't say, you know what? We need to take you out of this environment and put you into another environment. Only when you get stable do we turn you to another environment. We have to go through another transition. It makes no sense. Let people transition in place. Let people heal in place. Focus on community integration and reduce use of first responders and other emergency resources. Create a space for people to thrive. Dignity and autonomy. So best place to heal and engage when people are tenants, not clients. Best place for people to integrate with community and neighborhood and local resources. So we're not ghettoizing people, we're not otherizing people, we're including people. The pets, partners, and belongings stay with people. And then should people go to treatment, they have a safe and dignified home to go to when treatment is over and sustain recovery. Now, I just want to talk for a moment about the dollars and cents. Because when I get to it, the price tag to do 2,500 units is going to be astronomical. What if you're already spending $1 gazillion on the 2,500 people who are unsheltered already? And you're going to keep paying for that forever unless you come up with a solution. Study after study shows between $15,000 and $30,000 per saving per person per year. That continues on. Increased volunteer and paid employment opportunities for tenants so people have something to do. Health improvements, including substance use and mental health. Decreased demands on emergency health services and creates housing assets. And I'll also say, contrary to what you may have heard in other circles, housing with supports with fidelity works because I've done it for years as a practitioner. I happen to have worked in shelters. I've worked in supportive housing. I've worked in street outreach. You know what works? Taking someone underneath the bridge and saying, you have the dignity and the worth to have a place to call home with the right supports to make this your home forever. So what San Diego needs? Well, it needs solutions that are proven. It needs to not just help people temporarily, it needs to help people permanently. The question isn't, should San Diego build permanent supportive housing at scale? The question should be, how fast can we build or acquire units throughout the city so that the community reaches 2,500 units of PSH in the next 5 years for people who are chronically unsheltered, and it ends their unsheltered homelessness for good. So just to draw some comparisons, because you're supposed to be voting on a solution. You can vote for Margot's, that's awesome.
I wanted to do Ian's, but Lisa told me he was already taking it.
So what I'm offering is a permanent solution that is proven to reduce unsheltered homelessness, that is a proven model as demonstrated in peer-reviewed published journals and government studies, that yes, it will cost $305 million over those 5 years, with about $6 million in operating costs thereafter. But if you actually think about that, with 2,500 people consuming a gazillion resources now and they have nothing to show for it, can we afford not to do it?
Mm-hmm.
And it's connected to communities, neighborhoods, and services. San Diego, do you want to be a world-class city, or do you want to be in perpetual reaction mode? Do you want to invest in solutions, or do you want to perpetuate people's homelessness? That's the option before you. Thank you.
Well, and first off, can I just also say, before we start the debate and discussion here, please give our panelists a round of applause. Willing to stick their necks out and talk about solutions and also have a time clock going while they did it, and extra points for Margot for dealing with some sound issues. First off, Patrick, would you like to respond to, and I'll put this slide up. Would you like to respond to this slide that Ian had presented about the differences between your two solutions?
Yeah, one of the things the Marine Corps taught me was how to fight through ambushes. So I've got a two-sided ambush here going on. Again, no animosity, no who's right and no who's wrong. Our approach is based on a continuum of care. And I didn't hear either one of my colleagues up here talk about the care element of taking people off the streets and into some place where they can be diagnosed, initially evaluated, had their medical, dental, hygiene needs taken care of, give them a place away from the predators as a temporary solution. We're not promoting Sunbreak Ranch as the final solution. We're looking at Sunbreak Ranch as the first step in the continuum of care to eventually get to the point where we do get rid of considering people homeless, that we do put people in permanent housing, but that we optimize their ability to be successful once they get to that permanent housing condition.
Margot looks like she wants to respond.
So, I mean, I think a couple of things. The studies that Iain mentioned, I did a social impact bond evaluation, and let's just say the investors were paid off. It worked, basically. We took the most complicated people in Santa Clara County. It was Silicon Valley, so we used these like complicated models, data, scraping, and found the most complicated people who had the highest use of services. We only had enough housing for half of them. So literally what happened is we put a tag in everyone's chart. So if they showed up in jail, they showed up in the psych ER or whatever, we got called and we showed up at 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning after they'd been up all night. And we were like this, hey, you've never met us before, but I know you've been out here for 10 years and you use, a service every day and you're a total mess. If you agree to sign these 20 documents and be in a study, you get a 50-50 chance of being in housing. We approached 400 people. 2 said, I'm too tired to talk. 1 said no. And everyone else said, sign me up. And then they signed them up. And 86% by the time we published it, 91% by the time we finished, were moved into housing at a median length of time of 2 months from the day we randomly showed up. And then over 7 years, they spent over 90% of their nights housed. What happened? They had services wrapped around, their use of services rationalized. They actually spent a fair amount of healthcare dollars because they got the hip replacement, they got the aneurysm surgery, but what they weren't doing is cycling in and out. They enrolled in substance use treatment, they enrolled in mental health treatment. So Iain and I are completely aligned. He just got to Lisa first. But I will say there's a lot of evidence. Now, to speak to the Colonel, I think there is one thing here, is that not everyone needs PSH. And we don't do PSH right. I'm a physician. I am that person who provides those services. I can't provide those services when people are outdoors. They need the safety and stability of home. But we do need to triage them effectively. I just think we can triage them wherever they are. Because frankly, a lot of the people out there, they just need housing, right? Some of those people need housing and a voucher. Some of those people need housing, a voucher, and some services. And some need housing and voucher and a lot of services, and a tiny proportion need something more, like a residential treatment facility in the community. And we do need to get out there and figure out who needs what. And then, as Iain said, we need to do it to the model. Putting people in housing who have lots of trauma, lots of substance use, lots of mental health things, and they don't have services isn't going to work. We need to wrap the services around, but you don't have to earn housing. You don't have to learn how to be housed. Housing is not the prize for sobriety. We need to get you into housing, and then we need to give you the right amount of services. As the Colonel said, some people need surgery and some people just need a Band-Aid.
Iain, do you want to weigh in?
So I did a really unscientific poll this morning, not nearly as extensive as Margot's actual research. But I am currently on Eastern time, which means that like 2 o'clock in the morning, touring around Little Italy and talking to anybody who was up was exactly what I wanted to be doing for a few hours. And of the 31 people I talked to this morning in and around Little Italy, not one didn't say that they wouldn't take housing immediately if it was offered to them.
Right. Yes. It's a myth that people don't want housing. They do want housing. We just aren't offering them housing.
Paddy, do you want to talk about, when you talk about a continuum of care, what are you talking about? What would be wrapped around this person at Sunbreak Ranch?
Can I answer your first question?
Oh,
by
yeah,
saying,
definitely.
no, I don't want to talk about it. The continuum of care from our perspective is, again, right now, because we have 2 one former and 1 active San Diego police officer who have dealt with the homeless situation in San Diego. So they have firsthand knowledge of the streets here in San Diego, our community. And I agree that if we were to give people the opportunity to have housing, they would jump on it. Absolutely, without a doubt, no argument there. But right now, the way the system is set up, and it's a policy issue, I get it. The police have no alternative when they, first of all, they're understaffed. Secondly, they if they're allowed to pick up people on the street that are in violation of standing laws, they can bring them to the jail. They're turned around either that day or released the next day, and they're put back in the same environment that is just, it's terrible. It's sad. It's unforgivable in my mind. And it's a cycle. It's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and we're not really breaking out of it. All we're trying to do with Sunbreak Ranch as that first step in the continuum of care, ultimately resulting in, and it could be a short duration, like you said, Margot, there might be people that we pick up that just need a place to live. Okay, fine, great. We're not cookie cutter solutioning the thing. We're identifying that person, and then we'll have on site, either physically located at Sunbreak Ranch or virtually connected to Sunbreak Ranch, with counselors at Sunbreak Ranch that can facilitate people. I'm a veteran. The VA is broken. I'm here to tell you, I lived it. I'm a disabled veteran, and it is badly broken. The problem with the veterans on the street is they don't have the wherewithal, they don't have the assets, they don't have the connectivity to take advantage of those critical elements that they need to support them. We'll get that for them as part of the continuum of care. First step, so they're off the street, the police can bring them, instead of to jail, they bring them to Sunbreak Ranch. We do the medical, psychological, hygiene, we get them all cleaned up, we get them safe. They're away from the predators that are preying on them, the drug dealers, the traffickers, all those external influences, stimuli that are adversely affecting their ability to just get a quiet place to relax and heal, and then diagnose each individual person and give them that safe, stable environment for a period of time. It could be 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, but they're not going to stay at Sunbreak Ranch forever. They're going to get to the ultimate solution, which my two colleagues here talk about, and I violently agree with. We've got to get those people, we've got to get those people out the street. We've got to get them into housing, and we've got to do it quickly because we're losing them right now. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and I think Iain looked at me first. So I think, do you have something that you wanted to say in response?
I just, the notion of I think creating a safe space is really noble. What I can tell you, given the focus on veterans, is through my work throughout Florida, 22 different counties using SSVF and what was known as HUD-VASH, we've almost functionally ended veterans homelessness in all 22 counties without having a triage center, by moving veterans directly into housing and wrapping supports around them. So this idea that people require that is unnecessary. But there's another thing that I think is really great in your idea around Sunbreak, which is that idea of a very person-centered level of understanding of needs. I think is brilliant. I think the quibble I would have is where it occurs, not if it's necessary. And I think that when it comes to things like, understanding someone who's in survival mode, who has been in a position where essentially we're offering something completely abnormal, right? In terms of adapting to your environment and staying alive. My life might be dysfunctional, but I'm alive. Do I really want to take the next step to go into housing or to go to a Sunbreak Ranch or to go to a shelter even sometimes? It can be a really difficult process for people. And so just really looking at, I agree with the not one size fits all approach. And I agree that we really need to have customized approaches. And I think we can take some of the ideas and infuse them into existing facilities in terms of how that operates. But I don't think we need a new ranch to do it.
Margot?
I mean, one thing I would say, what I always say, is that people don't need to go through any transitional stage, but because our system has failed, we sort of sometimes need it. It's not like people need it. I can take someone from the street and put them in permanent housing, no problem. Because our system is such a mess, sometimes we need a place to put them. That's question one. The VA has decreased homelessness by 55% over the last decade, while homelessness in every other sector has skyrocketed. What I like to say is that no person who has served our country should spend a night on the street. Nobody who has served our country should spend a night on the street. I also happen to think that nobody should spend a night on the street. Nobody should, right? I do think that one of the things that the VA did brilliantly is no matter what you say about the VA health, and there is a lot of problems with it, veterans have access to something compared to what everyone else has, which is, let me tell you, working in the safety net, which is a whole lot worse than the VA. And that they did brilliantly was merge the one system that people seem to use. So what we know, and we've done this through lots of research and lots of data scraping and things, is people experiencing homelessness connect with the healthcare system. And we at the healthcare system are really good at triage. I can tell you within 5 minutes of meeting someone, whether they need the ICU, whether they can be discharged home. That's why we do like a zillion years of training. Likewise, the healthcare system is a really good place to do that triage because people are accessing it. I agree that we need to do triage, that we need to not only do things to scale, but we need to get people where they are. And I think because our system is so failed, we do sometimes need a landing place. But let me tell you what else. That landing place has to be by choice. It has to be on a harm reduction sort of level, and we have to access, evidence-based treatment. I get really, really worried about some sober facilities where people are not allowed to use and not allowed to get the best treatment. For instance, there are some facilities that won't let people access things like buprenorphine and methadone or naltrexone because they have beliefs about these medicines. These medicines reduce the risk of death by half. Addiction is a relapsing and remitting illness, a lot like rheumatoid arthritis or other things. Addiction is not dependence, and we know how to treat it. And so wherever people land, if they need a place while we figure things out, let's use the best available care, which is that people are going to use. That's sort of how it goes. You're going to have to support them through that use and keep them alive because I can't treat them if they're already dead. We need to get them the best available treatment, and then we need to triage them quickly. I can take someone from the street into housing, no problem. It's just that our system is so broken that sometimes the system needs a place, not the person, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Paddy.
Oh, yeah?
I've done it.
Yeah.
And studied it.
Again, I'm in violent agreement with my colleague. The only thing I'll bring up is that the system is broken. And right now, people are dying on the street. My sense of urgency is immediate. I don't have time to admire the problem anymore. I'm not going to sit by and let people die on the streets. And right now, the system isn't doing triage, at least here in San Diego County. It's not. So we're going to fill that void with Sunbreak Ranch. You can argue the viability of it. Okay, fine. But I think my colleagues here would agree that it is viable to triage. It is viable to customize and tailor the treatment or the follow-on elements of the continuum of care. Whether it's done in permanent housing, man, I'd love to see that. But right now, the system's broken. Sunbreak Ranch is not going to be the ultimate solution. It's not the panacea. And I'll leave you with this. If not us, then who? And if not now, then when? Stop normalizing homelessness. It's not normal in society, and we can do better.
Just want to quickly say we're going to be starting questions here shortly. If you have a question, you can use that QR code to open up the app where you can submit questions, or you can get up or raise your hand and we can give you a note card if you're having a lot of issues with the app. So please, we will be taking your questions soon. One thing that, I think is important to ground this conversation too, is that in San Diego for a long time, we have heard about other communities housing people directly from the street. It's starting to happen more here, but a lot of times people have to go to shelter first, and they'll be there for a very long time before they get housing. So I'd like each of you to kind of talk about how your solution addresses or that change that would have to happen to make that work here. What would we need to do if your solution is permanent housing? And then for Paddy, how does your solution help make that bridge happen more quickly to have throughput? Because one thing I have learned in covering homelessness for now more than 10 years is that if you can't swiftly move people through that shelter into housing, that shelter kind of becomes de facto housing. People are there for a long time.
Yes.
So who wants to go first? Margot's ready.
I mean, I do think that, I often hear electeds talk about we need to build more shelter, we need to more shelter. And I have to point out that like each unit of housing creates a unit of shelter. And I'm seeing some mayors now who shall not be named, pulling money out of permanent housing and putting it into shelter. And that's like a losing game because each time you move someone to permanent housing, you free up a shelter and otherwise people just stack up in shelter. So that's one. Two is we need to build. I think the state is doing a lot. I think we're about to go into a very hard period. For instance, with the big, beautiful bill, about 60,000 people at least are going to lose their emergency housing vouchers. We're going to just throw this. A lot of those people will wind up, unfortunately, back to homelessness. Not everyone, but a lot will. So we're going to go through a hard time. This is a resource question. This is an anti-NIMBY question. We need to build, and we also need to subsidize it because the market can't support it. We need to do a much better job, much better than we're currently doing, connecting our healthcare system to our housing system, because some people need that healthcare really adapted. And I would also say that, people are offered big congregate shelter and they will turn it down. And then people are like, oh, they don't want to be housed. People are afraid of big congregate shelter, many of them. They experience violence there, or they have a lot of trauma there. If you're going to use shelter, we need to have it be non-congregate, people's partners, pets, etc. And again, people don't need that step, but our system likely does. But we have to keep our eyes on the prize, which is we've got to, no matter what else is going on, don't move away from building and creating and subsidizing more permanent housing, because that creates more shelter.
Yes. Paddy, Iain, who wants to go next?
I think shelters sometimes get a bad rap. Just to put it in context, I mean, this isn't every shelter, but too many shelters throughout the country have people who are paid minimum wage or close to it to work with some people with the most complex co-occurring issues in their life, and then wonder why they struggle to get good clinical objectives or good community connections or good outcomes with the people. And so if we actually want to professionalize our response, we have to professionalize our service, which means we have to compensate people and train them well enough. A big heart does not equal a big brain. We need both, right? We need smart people with big hearts to do this work in shelter. What is the purpose of a shelter? Is a question that if we were to take a number of shelter providers in any community throughout the country, or other countries for that matter, and say, why do you exist? You wouldn't get a common answer, because most shelters don't operate as a system, they operate in silos, right? My shelter, my mandate, my clients, my programs, my approach.
Yeah.
And we need our own outreach team to bring people to our shelter. And then we're going to advocate to elected officials as if we're the system.
Yeah.
And that crap has to stop.
Yeah.
We need communities that have done it well actually operate shelters as a system, not as a collection of projects.
Yeah.
Communities that do sheltering well focus a lot more on transition to non-congregate shelter. I'll absolutely agree with that. And also treat shelter as a process, not a destination.
Yes.
It is the process by which you get your ID hooked up with healthcare, get your social security sorted out, problem solve with that relative who may be able to help you out, mediation services, et cetera. So process, not a destination. We actually, in my beloved native Canada, we're now in year 2 of a national initiative called the Canadian Shelter Transformation Network, which is to work with shelters throughout the entire country to make them all housing focused. So from the moment you show up at that shelter, the desire is to get you out as quickly as possible into permanent housing with the supports that follow you in community. And the preliminary data is showing that that is actually decreased lengths of stay exponentially and improved housing outcomes. And then the last thing that I'll say is that when we fund shelters, we tend to fund from a charity model, not from a performance model. And I think that we actually need to fund shelters from a performance model, but one that doesn't incentivize creeping, housing a bunch of people who are going to house themselves and then taking credit for it, but actually do the inverse of that, right? I actually want to pay you more to house people who are your people using the most services in your shelter. So people using the most bed stays, people who are utilizing emergency healthcare on a regular basis, most first responders, reactions, that sort of thing. And I just want to pick up on one other point, just relative to shelter, and the same thing with housing. We need a diversity of options. Right? Like, it's not one size fits all. So I absolutely will say some shelters can and should be places where people can be sober, so long as the system has enough capacity for people who do use, who want access to shelter, so that I can be consumer driven by consumer choice, right?
And that they get to choose.
And they get to choose. Right? Because, and I'm just going to poll the audience real fast, just to demonstrate what is common thinking around this space. If any of you have had one or more drinks of alcohol or used cannabis in the last 90 days, can you raise your hand? Those are substances that are legal. Clearly, you don't deserve to be housed. You're not sober.
Patty, you have the last word before we go to questions.
Again, I'll just harken back to Sunbreak Ranch as a temporary solution. It's a triage. We, in combat, when we took a wounded Marine or soldier off the battlefield, they weren't meant to stay in the triage facility forever. They were meant to be diagnosed, initial life-saving measures undertaken, and then moved to where they could get specialized care and long-term care. The other thing is, right now, we don't have something in our system here in San Diego that moves people to any place other than jail and then back on the street. The shelters don't diagnose currently. Well, most of them don't. So we're just proposing an interim solution here to get people off the street, get them safe, get them the time that they need to recover, recuperate, take a breath, some quiet time, safe, away from the predators, and then get them to follow on treatment. That's it. I don't disagree with either one of my colleagues here for the long-term end state desire. But right now in San Diego, we don't have a Sunbreak Ranch, and we need a Sunbreak Ranch.
And now we're going to go to questions. So our first question today will be asked by Naomi Shim. She's a Price Fellow. Each year, the Aaron Price Fellows program selects 40 kind, inquisitive, open-minded ninth graders from a pool of 300 applicants for a 3-year journey. They go behind the scenes to see how cities function, explore the role of community members in shaping society, and develop empathy and skills for navigating a diverse world. The program is a high school leadership experience started in 1991 by the Price family. The mission of the Aaron Price Fellows program is to prepare a highly motivated and diverse group of San Diego public high school students to be responsible, engaged, and caring members of their community. Naomi, do you want to come up and ask the first question?
Hi, my name is Naomi Shim. I am a senior at University City High School, and my question for the speakers is this. Policy debates often circle around density bonuses, zoning reform, and subsidies. From your perspective, which policy change would have the most immediate impact on lowering housing costs for working families in San Diego, and what's standing in the way of it?
Maybe one. Who wants to take that one first? Margot?
In most of the country, if we had subsidies, homelessness would end within 30 days. Because the problem is just a payment problem. In California, because our housing production has been so atrocious for so long, that subsidies would not immediately end homelessness because there's literally not enough housing, and it's such a competitive market that you see property owners refusing to rent, to owners. What I do hear, though, from my housing colleagues is that the biggest problem in housing is that they don't have ongoing funding sources. They can usually piece together LIHTC and state money and other things to actually create the housing, but then they can't sustain it. So I would say, and this is a very unsatisfying answer, in most of the country, subsidies will end homelessness, period, full stop. In California, we need to do both simultaneously, because if we do all the zoning reform, but we don't have an ongoing funding source, we're still going to be in a crisis. But if we just use subsidies, there's not going to be a place to use them. So I'm sorry that I don't have a satisfying answer, but it's a both and that we need to get to it really quickly.
And LIHTC is tax credits to support affordable housing. Ian, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, great question. Thinking back to urban planning days, I would say for sure we need to have conversations about all three, but I think which one has the greatest impact will be relative to the jurisdiction within which it's applied.
Yeah.
I think Margot's point around subsidies would be great and people need to live. I think as a society, we transitioned from the NIMBY era to the bananas era. Are you familiar with bananas? Build absolutely nothing anywhere near anybody.
It's been California policy for 40 years.
Yeah. So it's not just not in my backyard. It's not in anybody's backyard.
Yeah.
And so we can have the policy discourse around why would we do density bonusing if you were always going to allow that height? Why not just allow it by right from the beginning? We should have zoning conversations. And in particular, how do we make sure we zone for uses and not for people? And we should absolutely have the conversation around, and what would a subsidy look like that was sustainable, as opposed to, again, we have to move our mindset from charity to investment in solutions. Charity begets charity, and in the history of humankind, charity has never solved a complex social issue. It can't. It's not designed to. Charity is great at meeting immediate needs. Subsidies, if they actually had longevity to them, would provide a permanent solution that we'd have both ongoing stock coming on board as well as affordability for people who move into that stock. Thanks, Naomi.
And to be fair, like California, we are making progress. Like just this week, another bill was passed, the governor signs it. I mean, we are slowly having a change in our legislature and in our governor to take actually control away from cities and counties because they've done such a terrible job we've had 40 years of bananas and we're slowly moving out of it.
Patty, do you want to weigh in?
I love that banana term. I'm going to plagiarize it. Yeah, this is really, I don't intend to dodge your question, but I am going to dodge your question because it's way outside the scope of Sunbreak Ranch.
So
We're going to eat, our proposal is to eat the elephant one or two bites at a time, not dine on the entire elephant at once, okay?
Yeah.
does the elephant eat bananas?
Potassium.
Now we'll go to some other audience questions. The most popular question it looked like on the app was, how do you get political will to build permanent supportive housing in neighborhoods? Bananas.
Yeah, well, I mean, we framed it as a response to homelessness as opposed to framing it as community investment, right? We framed it as the taxpayer is going to pay for someone else to have free housing, as opposed to I'm investing in making sure my taxes don't go up because people are using a whole bunch of emergency services they don't need to use. Right. And so we haven't sold people necessarily on why is it in your best interest that people move into PSH. We often talk about why it is in the individual who's experiencing houselessness best interest to have PSH. But really it has benefit to communities. It has economic benefits in terms of construction and trades and property management. It has economic benefits in terms of potential social purpose enterprises. It has economic benefits in terms of labor force participation for those who are able and volunteerism for those who are not able. But instead, we tend to focus on why did those people get that thing? So political will, I mean, I'll give you an example of two other kind of case studies. One, the often touted conversation around Finland and what Finland did to get great reductions in homelessness came about from a government that actually, my characterization, they wouldn't characterize themselves this way, they didn't really care about people who are experiencing homelessness, they cared about the costs.
Yeah.
Right. And so what's going to be the most cost effective? Build a crap ton of housing, which I believe is an actual amount.
Yeah.
And provide the supports for people to stay housed. And wouldn't you know, the government change in Finland is increasing homelessness again.
Yeah.
Right. So that's an example. So political will, it's really about sometimes the economics. The other example that I point to is it can be helpful to have a national investment strategy that is comprehensive in its objectives, but very narrow in its intended outcomes. So comprehensive in objectives, labor force participation, trades, all those sorts of things I just mentioned, but narrow in its objectives or outcomes that we're seeking, which is who do we actually want to get the best outcome for? And I think about if I'm an elected official, and goodness knows I've talked to plenty of elected officials throughout the world, they're more sick of the nuisance calls than they are anything else in many instances. And it becomes a political hot potato because there isn't the off-the-shelf one-size-fits-all answer. And because we're often asking people to have expertise in areas that they don't.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, homelessness response is one of the only areas I know of where we assume that if you care enough, you're qualified.
Yeah.
Right. And then I would just come back to, you know, I care a lot about overcrowded emergency rooms. Like I hate it when I go to get healthcare and I have to wait. You don't see me strapping on scrubs and going to provide healthcare.
Right.
I'm not qualified.
Right.
So if we have PSH and we ever want to get political will, we have qualified people providing an evidence-based practice that saves the taxpayer money, that is part of our public infrastructure as important as roads and schools and parks and clean drinking water and sewage and trash collection, et cetera.
And can I point out why we've lost the political will? I want to remind us all that PSH came out of that radical Marxist San Francisco president, George W. Bush, his administration, right? It was a Republican administration that really led the way. It was a little bit like a Nixon going to China thing, but partially because they looked at the ledger and they said, they went to Harvard Business School. What costs more? What is more effective? Oh, this is more effective. Let's move away from our prior evidence of you had to like work your way into housing and move to this. Why did we lose political will? Because there was, as there often is, an organized, funded, politicized effort to weaponize responses to homelessness in the United States. Where is homelessness worse? Read Greg Colburn's incredible book, Homelessness is a Housing Problem. Homelessness is not worse where mental health problems are worse. It's not worse where substance use problems are worse. It's worse where there's a bigger disconnect between housing costs and low-income populations. Where is there a bigger disconnect? In knowledge economy areas, in places where a lot more people have moved to, in places where there are a lot of high-paying jobs. What are those? Those are blue states. So there has been a very well-funded politicized effort to try to like knock, blue governors and blame this on them. And it has changed the public narrative and we lost the thread. We just did a terrible job like funding political conversations, and we got this weaponized against us. I agree 100% with Iain. The public doesn't care. And I care a lot about people experiencing homelessness. You probably do. The public doesn't. But if we frame this as a measure that will increase community safety and security and help communities thrive, we have a much better chance of winning back the narrative, because that is the truth. If we invest in housing, we are investing in community safety and security and allowing the whole community to function better.
So the next question is for Paddy. This one also got a lot of votes. How would Sunbreak Ranch be different than what used to be called in the city of San Diego, the Homelessness Response Center? It's now called the Hub. For folks that aren't aware of what this facility is, it's a place where people can go, check in, get assessed, potentially get in line for shelter. Will note that I've talked to many people in that line over the years who did not get a bed. But how will Sunbreak Ranch be different? This person also asked, aren't there enough people connecting people to services? Why not build housing?
Well, I absolutely agree with my colleagues and whomever asked that question that ultimately building more housing is a solution. We're just merely a stopgap effort that is scalable. So we'll start small. It's incremental, proof of concept with veterans, get the veterans off the street, get them in, and then build up, scale up as we build more, add more buildings onto the facility, and everything will be expeditionary, to use a Marine term. Nothing is going to be permanent because we want to be out of business at a point in the future. But I no pride of authorship here. Plagiarism is paramount. There are elements of many organizations within San Diego County right now, one of them being East County Transitional Living Center in El Cajon, that are doing a little bit of this now, but there isn't one hub and spoke location anymore. And that's what we're proposing Sunbreak Ranch to do, be that location, temporary as it may be, until we get the rest of the system caught up and we can move people through, or not even move people through Sunbreak Ranch, because we won't have a need for Sunbreak Ranch anymore. But right now there's a glaring hole that we plan to fill with Sunbreak Ranch. Whoever asked that question, does that answer your question?
They're not saying who asked that question. I think it was an anonymous one. This is a question I think all three of you certainly would like to weigh in on. How long does it take to train staff for adequate wraparound services?
I think it's about bringing in the right mix of people. I will say to Ian's point, like when during COVID, we were tracking outbreaks, a lot of the people who worked in shelters worked in one shelter and lived in another shelter. And that's how low paid they are, that they were working in homeless services and could not afford to live. That is disgusting and unacceptable. But I think it's a question of bringing in the right mix of staff. We have a healthcare system where if I wanted to get you, if you have private insurance and I wanted to spend $10,000 of your money in the next 10 minutes, I could very easily. So we have an existing mental health, people with mental health expertise, people with substance use expertise. We have those folks. They just need to spend part of their time in this, and we need to bring staff along. And I do think people with lived expertise are an incredibly essential part of this. And the question is, they need the training that they need depending on what, system. We should be doing a much better job using our community college system, which I feel like we're not, to actually prepare people in certificate programs and other things. And we should be promoting people through the system with lived expertise so that they are running these systems, right? But I think the question is, it's like, how much money does it cost to make a pair of pants for an orphan? Like it really depends like what position people are in or and how long, but I think we should be using our public education systems, including our incredible community college systems, CSUs and otherwise, to offer opportunities to get people the training that they need. And I would like to see this system work its way out of existence, but I would also like, while we're doing that, to see this system over the next few years being run by people with lived expertise, and give them the skills and capacity that they need.
Paddy, Iain, who wants to go next?
Yeah, for Sunbreak Ranch, we're not a training facility. We're absolutely going to use the experts that are available within the system now, fully trained, fully certified, fully validated. We don't have time to train people. It's not, although we have discussed quite a lot how we could access community colleges and the universities to provide intern programs or entry-level programs where people under the authority and under the mentorship of qualified medical psychological professionals can gain that expertise that they can grow within the industry going forward. But we're not going to be a training facility. We expect that the service providers, the supporting service providers that will reside on Sunbreak Ranch and have offices on Sunbreak Ranch will be paid for by the institutions, the agencies, the organizations that have volunteered to partner with us. And we will have an all-source access center, service support center with qualified counselors that we will pay on our payroll, that come in fully vetted, fully certified, to help get the individuals aligned with those external service support agencies.
Iain?
It was brought to my attention a few months ago in a community that I was at that if you're opening a new Walmart, you get more training than if you're opening a new shelter.
Yeah.
Or housing facility. Given the urgency, we often send people in with their hair on fire and say, learn by doing. And some of that will absolutely be part of the job always, because human beings are human beings and you can't prepare for all eventualities in a population group that has some weird and wonderful things that go on. But I think there's some core training that is absolutely imperative if we actually believe that we don't want to do more harm than good. But I also believe that as a sector as a whole, we actually need to have standards of training, not just what you need to be trained on, but who actually delivered the training. Did you actually have certification on the training? I have absolutely encountered many organizations in this community that are fantastic and they invest heavily in their staff and they send them to trainings and they figure out how it fits into their staff development plan. And I've encountered some organizations that I would be worried that they actually are engaging with another human being if they're responsible for getting a positive outcome and not doing more harm. So we need to, as a community, actually say, what is the minimum threshold standard? And then when we think about wraparound services, I think we can separate that into different buckets. If I'm like a general staff person, I'm there for general assistance. The amount of training I might need is going to be very much significantly less than like a case manager, that would be very less than like a clinical case manager, that would be very less. So you just kind of think about it as everybody needs some training and they'll get more refined and more refined and more refined and more refined for the population group. Everything you learned in high school science, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species.
And we believe in like everyone working at the top of their license is a sense that we have in healthcare, right? So we have an incredible system where we have incredible medical assistants who do a lot of the care, and then they have supervised by nurses who do a lot of the care, who then also work with physicians. Like everyone is doing what they were trained to do. So perhaps a physician isn't spending a lot of time filling out forms, but actually doing what they're trained to do. The nurses are doing what they're trained to do, and you can build a system like that. But everyone needs some training, right? We train our Home Depot staff, we train our Walmart staff. We should be offering training and advancement opportunities for everybody.
So I think this is going to have to be our last question. It's a good one. The question is, the city of LA spent up to $800,000 a unit on permanent supportive housing. How do you scale at that price?
Right. So this is where I'll say the strategy from the very beginning has to look at three components. So not all new construction.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to look at acquisition.
Yes.
And that is definitely going to be all different types of dwelling, not just large multi-unit residential buildings, a range of different types of dwellings. Because if we want to have community integration, we don't want things sticking out like a sore thumb in the communities where they're located. We want people to walk by and say, I had no idea there was formerly homeless people living there. That's the sort of environment that we want. So we have to think about that. We have to think about modular construction, and in particular, that is coming to scale in many different other communities at a way that completely slashes the amount of construction time down, which means that also those costs of carrying until you actually have occupancy go way down. So that's really important. And then being able to construct under controlled conditions can make a huge difference. For me, when I was looking at the data relative to the cost of what it was taking to build existing PSH, where I could find publicly available information in the San Diego community, is where I derived the estimates that I came up with relative to the scale of need.
But everyone doesn't need a new building, right? I get asked that a lot. Like, there's some interesting work being done in Oakland where an organization bought, 3 and 4 bedrooms houses in disinvested areas, spent $100,000 to fix them up, and found, 2 or 3 roommates who could live there successfully. We saw with HomeKey the acquisition of things like hotels and motels that could be rapidly transformed. It's it's got to be a mix. And I agree, we don't want it to be like, ooh, here is the permanent supportive housing. There needs to be a mix. Some clients do better in project-based housing where there's like a case manager and staff who live in the building. Some do a lot better in a small studio apartment across town where they're not in a heavily impacted area where there's a lot of public drug use and everything. And that should be based on client choice, but we really need a wide variety. And we just need a lot more housing for everybody in this state.
So now it is time to get your phones out and take a picture right here to open up the app if you haven't already. And you will get a chance to vote on which presenter's solution you found most compelling. And then later today, we will hear who the winner is. So I'm going to give you all a few minutes before we close out here to work on those. If you have any issues with it, please raise your hand and one of us can come and try to help you with that process. And yes, presenters, you can vote for yourself. Don't forget, you can raise your hand if you're having issues. Nobody will judge you.
Can I vote for Iain and Margot?
Yes, actually, what's really cool about this is I believe it's ranked choice voting. Who else is a nerdy enough person to know what ranked choice voting is, right? So you can actually put in order, yes. So you could have a number 1, 2, and 3, which I love.
I don't think that.
It's just.
It's not working that way? Okay, in the testing, it looked like it was going to work that way. Is everybody getting those votes in?
Yes.
Well, as you all wrap that up, please first, can we give a round of applause to the panelists again? They present them here today.